John McMullen, who will give us some insight on what today Doug Pederson announced at his day after press conference. Number one, he said they will not put Carson Wentz on the IR. They will go with Nick Foles. He also kind of said today that, keep in mind, this is Carson Wentz's team. He will play when he is healthy enough to go. That's why they're not going to put him on the IR. However, there's so many layers to this one here. Let's get into that. The game last night, big win by the Birds. They're still alive, played pretty well, and it's just, I don't know, is it irony? Is it coincidental that this team seems to have a different feel when number 9's playing quarterback, John?
I think it's a few things. I think on a subconscious level, you talk about a backup player, and everybody else needs to kind of tighten it up, and they realize that. I think that's part of it. And then the second part is I do think the team has a lot of confidence in Nick Foles.
Do they not have the same amount of confidence in Carson?
No, but I think they know when Carson, and again, I don't think it's on a conscious level. I think it's subconscious. And this is with any star player. You kind of look for him to bail you out at times, and you say, well, we'll do this. If you get behind the sticks, he'll be able to make a play. I think they understand if there's an issue or a negative play, it's much more unlikely they're going to be able to overcome it. And that's what I mean by sort of tightening things up and playing a cleaner game. I don't know how you can prove that, but I just think that's the mentality of sort of a backup player, and that everyone understands they need to pick up and they start to focus a little bit more. And I think you see these, especially in short-term runs. And if you have to play backups for long-term periods, it usually starts to waver. But in the short term, it can be a positive, and I think that's what happens.
Is the game plan different? Is the play calling different?
Well, Doug says no. It was interesting because I asked him today when he criticized my hat, which I'm very upset about, but that was a nice hat. But he mentioned that he and Mike Rowe, and this is before Carson got injured, and they were scaling things back after the Dallas game. And I think they came to the point, and perhaps it took them too long to get to that point, to realize that things were not going as they projected them to go, and they needed to make some changes, and he called it back to basics. And they took some things out of the game plan. So maybe simplifying things helped. And then I think you got to give Nick Foles credit. I mean, I think the ball came out quicker than when Carson is in the game. That's not typically a strength of Nick either, but it was last night. The ball generally came out on time. And then Alshon Jeffrey, I think, giving him the opportunity to get those 50-50 balls. That's what Alshon Jeffrey is. That's the strength of his game.
No doubt.
And that has not been there, certainly over the past number of weeks. And to get 8 out of 8 targets, and then I think Golden Tate, who barely played again, but when he was in there was effective, 5 out of 5 targets. So those two receivers alone, it's 13 out of 13. That's pretty good.
Yep. We have the weekly conversation. They are 7-0 when they run 27 or more times. They are 0-7 when they do not tote it.
Another interesting tidbit between myself and Doug Pederson. Last time this came up, I said, hey, Doug, everybody says if you run it 26 times, you're undefeated, so just run it 27 times. And as predicted, he laughed at me. But look, this is a pet peeve of mine. I admit it. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand why people can't register this. The Rams have in their own packet their record when Todd Gurley touches it a certain amount of times, which is phenomenal. And they didn't get him the football that many times yesterday, partially because he got a little banged up, but also because, hey, they were down 30-13. So you got to start slinging the football with a quarterback who is really struggling right
but
now.
That's where I think the balance comes in, is when the score's 30-13. The Eagles have been up 17-0, and in that moment is when they choose to not run. I get what you're saying, but that is where you end up balancing that thing out, is because you have the lead, and now you're trying to wind the clock. I thought they shortened that game and were able to keep that defense off the field.
Well, I felt that was a prudent plan because of the opponent, and I mentioned that on Countdown to Kickoff, and the Eagles did win the toss, and everything worked out. I advocated they should take the football and try to shorten the game. They were able to get a 3-and-out, so it didn't matter, and they won on a good drive. So the same kind of thing happened. But, yeah, anytime you're playing a team that's more explosive, it makes sense to try to shorten the game. And I think they were able to do it early, not necessarily late, and that's what happens. As poorly as the Rams played, they had a chance to go for the tie or the win on the final play of the game, throwing the football in the end zone. That's what happens in this league. There's especially against teams that are that dynamic. They're always coming at you. They're always coming back, and you got to keep scoring, or you're going to be in that type of position. So to me, and I've talked about this at length with Doug, it's you do it any way possible. And if you're running well, you run it. And if you're passing well, you pass it. And I just think that's an antiquated way of thinking in the 2018 NFL. Everybody, you can go, Mike, you can go to every single game notes package from every team in this league, and there will be a note about how effective they are when somebody touches the football a certain amount of times, because that's what happens when you win games. But that's a recipe because of the winning, not a recipe for the winning.
Oh, I could agree with you there. Like, they didn't win the game last night because they ran the ball with regularity and ran it really well, but they were able to shorten the game because when they did get out to a lead, they handed it off and let the clock run. I mean, they're up. There was when they had that ball last, after the fumble, the kid fumbles the punt. They run the ball, and that game goes from 3:58 down to 3:10 in one play because they ran it. And I mean, I get it.
When you get up 30-13, that's definitely what you want to do. You want to siphon the clock as much as possible. The problem, back in a different era, though, that was a guaranteed win. In this era, it's kind of like you try to do it and you hope. And too often, and we saw the Eagles on the positive side of it yesterday. We've seen them on the negative side of it as well. And even if you go back to the game, who was that? It wasn't the game against Minnesota, where Minnesota was trying to siphon the clock against them, and the Eagles. It's tough, and I realize it's tough for coaches in this league because the thought is, well, you got a 14-point lead, you should be able to run the clock out. It's just not that way anymore.
Well, look, and I go to that Cleveland game on Saturday night, okay? It's a 1-point game. Cleveland wins by 1. Mayfield has 31 passes. They run it 28 times. On the flip side, I got Keenum throwing 48 times, and I got Lindsey, who's not having a great game, and I only hand the ball off 20 times. The disparity in a 1-point game I find to be egregious if I'm Denver to ask Case Keenum to throw the ball 48 times.
Yeah, well, every game, and we talk about it, has personality. Look at the Chargers is the game I was trying to think about against the Chiefs, and they come back to win it with a 2-point conversion. Now, that's arguably the best team in football, Kansas City. They got a 14-point lead with 5 minutes left. I mean, that game's over, right? They win the game. Mm-hmm. They score 15 points. They go for a 2-point conversion, and they walk off a winner. It's a different era.
Yeah.
If you can get 5 yards a chunk, hey, man, you should run the ball until they stop it.
Well, and which is kind of like where the Eagles –
it's delicate.
Yeah, the Eagles are in an interesting spot. Like Wendell Smallwood has 10 carries for 48 yards. He's getting almost 5 yards every time he touches the ball. On the flip side, Adams is not getting anything. But I thought and see if you agree with me. I thought because they showed that slows the defense down just enough, and I thought the windows are bigger for Foles than they are for Wentz because I think they put too much on Foles' plate. They think he is so much more talented that they throw so much on his plate, and I think the windows are just bigger for Foles.
Wentz's plate, I see.
Yes.
Yeah, Wentz's plate. No, I agree, and that's what Doug talked about, scaling things back a little bit, which he said he was going to do even if Carson was going to play. We'll never know because he obviously didn't. Look, there's no you'll get no argument from me. There are tons of good things that happen when you run the football and things people don't think about. And the fact that the linebacker's taking a step forward perhaps and you have and a little extra space behind him. So when you can do it, great. But as Doug says, and he says it consistently, and he hasn't wavered from this, and I agree with him 100%, when you're in the game, the old Mike Tyson quote, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. When you're in the game, you're trying to win the game any way possible. And if the Rams come back to win that game, they win it without the balance. It's ugly. Maybe if they tie the game on the last play of the game, maybe win it in overtime, maybe go for two. It doesn't matter. They won the game, even if the balance was ugly. But winning, and obviously if you're ahead, that's going to create all those good numbers that everybody puts in those stat packages.
All right, so what's going on with this Foles Wentz here? I know he made the announcement today that Foles is going to play, but they're not going to put Wentz on the IR. Does that keep the window open that Wentz plays against Washington? Does that keep the door open that Wentz would play if they were to win out and then make the playoffs? What's the tea leaves on this?
Well, the tea leaves are that Nick Foles is going to finish this season. And I think the Eagles are trying to sort of placate the ego. Not that he has a big ego. Maybe that's the wrong word because people put negative connotations on ego. But Carson's a very proud player. I don't think he wants to end another season on the injured reserve, but he's not coming back. And the second part of the press conference today was Doug was very forceful in saying when he is cleared, when he is healthy, he's starting quarterback. So I get when people say, could he come back against Washington because they're not going to put him on IR. That's not going to happen. And if they make the playoffs, still not going to happen. So this is Nick Foles' gig the rest of the way. And Carson will be back as the Eagles starting quarterback next season.
Very interesting because so why not put Wentz on the IR? What's the thought process there? Not that I really care, but I know that was a topic brought up. Like, I mean, he's not going to be active. He's not really taking up somebody's roster spot. I don't think they're going to go out and find someone that's going to help this team out, so I don't mind him not being on the IR, but why not just put any questions to bed and say Wentz isn't playing the rest of the year?
Well, that's what I think. They're just paying deference to him as a leader on this team. Understand that, if you go back to the coin toss, it was Carson Wentz who went out for the coin toss, not Nick Foles. And they want to have this sort of very clear because, you have this group. And if Nick pulls this off and goes to the playoffs, you can imagine how that certain group is going to explode even further and start talking about how he should be the starting quarterback long term. The Eagles don't believe that. They don't waver about that. They're very happy to have what they consider to be the best backup in football. But from a trait standpoint and a skill set standpoint, these two players are not close. And the issues that the Eagles were having offensively, and again, I go back to what Doug said. They were trying to scale things back even if Carson was healthy. There were other issues besides Carson Wentz, although, to be fair, he was also part of the problem, certain things he was doing as well.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Any new information on Wentz?
Doug said they got a good report. a stress fracture of the vertebrae. It's not a transverse process. So from a medical standpoint, as I mentioned, that's the only injury in that area of the anatomy that would have enabled him to play, and that's the transverse process. So once that was ruled out, and Doug did that on Friday in that contentious press conference he had, then you knew he's not coming back this season. And he admitted it's going to take 3 months to heal. The good part of it is no surgery. I guess the bad part is this is the second stress fracture in the back he's had. He had one in college as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. Eagles say it's all positive, but yeah, he's not going to be back this year.
All right. What about Jim Schwartz and that defense last night? How much of a factor role did they play in the victory? Some would suggest they get the #1 star if this is hockey.
Yeah, and I don't know who to give it to. You could give it to Fletcher Cox, who was brilliant. I think the fact that Aaron Donald was on the other side really ignited him even further than normal. He was a man possessed to show what type of player he is, and he did. I thought Michael Bennett was great again. But, to me, Fletcher was obviously the best, and he's the best player on this team, regardless of position. But Avonte Maddox, man, he was huge for that defense, coming in and playing left corner, outside cornerback. Remember, this is a rookie who's 5'9", and they made him into a nickel corner. Then he was forced into action because of injuries to Rodney McLeod and Corey Graham, forced to play safety. He did a workmanlike job there. Then he got hurt, misses 3 games, and when he comes back, they need an outside corner, and he plays that. And I think that was one of the best corner performances they've had all year. Even when Ronald Darby was healthy and Jalen Mills, I thought he did a tremendous, tremendous job. And Sidney Jones is week to week, so he's probably not going to play again. I don't think many people should care about that, because Avonte Maddox has been a find for this team. And he might not look like an outside corner, but he's got the mentality of an outside corner. And I think that's one of the positives of this team.
And John, I thought one of the big keys for the game last night, too, was very reminiscent of last year, where they let you catch the ball underneath, but they tackled you. They've been a lousy tackling team this year. Douglas, very good tackling. Maddox tackles you. Jenkins tackled you. I mean, LeBlanc, his name was being thrown around last night, so they tackled them last night.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Rasul has started to play better. I think that big game against Washington, that big play against Washington on the throwback to Chris Thomas, I think that sort of ignited his confidence. And he's a great tackler. He is. And he's got tremendous size for a corner. It's not great in press coverage, but you play to your strengths. So if you're playing zone coverage and letting them come up and tackle, I think you could see some of the positives of that. And LeBlanc has been a real find as well, off waivers from Detroit. He's played quite a few games in the NFL when they did pick him up. So he does have some experience, and he seems like a natural nickel corner. So things are a lot better at cornerback than they were a few weeks ago. It's still not great. I don't want to paint it as that, especially with DeAndre Hopkins coming in, who is a dominant receiver. But it's a heck of a lot better than it was a few weeks ago.
A lot of other, you had the 50-50 balls for Jeffrey. That's something that we haven't seen a lot with Wentz. I don't know why Foles is more willing to just throw that ball up there. I mean, sometimes you just, throw that ball up there and it turns out bad. For him, it's turned out to be pretty good, but Jeffrey seems to be more a part of the offense, at least last night. I talked about this before I was on vacation, John, was the first 4 games, he had 39 targets. The following 5, he was under 30 targets. So I don't know where he went and why he disappeared, but he was back in a big way last night.
Well, I think one of the criticisms you can put on Carson, and this is a lot of young quarterbacks, and you saw it with Jared Goff yesterday. All of a sudden, people are playing a ton of zone against Jared Goff, and he's got trouble pulling the trigger. And that's what happens. You talk to scouts, and it's a common theme with quarterbacks coming out of college and nowadays. And the fact is, they have to throw to open receivers. And traditionally in the NFL, great quarterbacks would throw receivers open with these timing patterns, and the ball would be out before the receiver's out of his break. You don't see that a lot from young quarterbacks until they get some experience. And maybe Nick is just at that point where he's got more experience and he's willing to let the receiver make a play even though he's not open. And as we said, that's the strength of Alshon Jeffrey's game. That's what he does. He's open when he's not open.
Yeah.
And he is going to go up and get the football. And he should have been used in that way a lot more. I don't think there's any question about that. And Nick did it, and he deserves credit for it.
What do you think went into Smallwood out of nowhere getting 20 snaps last night?
Well, Corey's gone, so his team, for whatever reason, likes that rotation. So once Corey's out, Wendell's in. So he's the complement to Josh Adams, who's the lead back, and Josh wasn't very effective in his running attempts, and all of a sudden Wendell got a little bit hot, and so he got the ball a little bit more. And that's sort of what the Eagles do and what they've done since Doug Pederson has arrived. They use this rotation. They haven't wavered from it, and it's going to continue. And now Wendell's back in it because Corey's hurt.
Jernigan, you mentioned Sidney Jones, Sayamala, Jordan Hicks. I mean, 2 games left. They're getting a little healthier.
Yeah, Jordan Hicks is the one guy. Doug said he expects him to practice on Wednesday, so that's a positive sign that he could potentially be back. With Tim, he said they're going to ask him to do a little bit of something this week, so we have to keep and monitor that because that could mean just trying to get him on the field. But I wouldn't count, and I've said it before, with cervical fusion surgery, I wouldn't count on Tim Jernigan this season. Hopefully he can get out there, but again, I just wouldn't count on it. And by the way, we mentioned Maddox and LeBlanc as surprises. I think you can throw Trayvon Hester in there as well as an interior defensive player. He's actually been pretty good and pretty effective, and that's a check mark and a positive as well. But yeah. I just don't know how much you can count on Tim Jernigan this year.
There's a name in the box score I never heard of before.
Trayvon? Or
no.
Deshaun Hall.
B.J. Bello. Who the hell's that?
B.J. Bello.
Yeah.
He was on the practice squad, and he got promoted this week because Jordan Hicks wasn't going to play again. So the Eagles wanted to get another linebacker on the roster and special teams player. So
I take 1 week off. You got B.J. Bello in the lineup. How about that?
Well, I'm surprised you know Deshaun Hall because he's in the lineup as well. So
I have heard of him.
He was a third-round pick in Carolina.
Yeah,
and he played at Texas A&M. He was the defensive end opposite Myles Garrett at Texas A&M.
How about that?
Nate Geary, was a big-time prospect at one point.
Nate Geary still stinks.
Poor Nate. Yeah. He had an interception while you were gone, Nate Geary.
He did. No, he played well. Again, he was all right last night. Him and Camus have done a nice job in that role. They haven't been – you know, it's funny. I don't know that I've heard an announcer say his name the entire season. Now, I know that's a position.
He had a good game. That was his best game of the year.
Yes, I was going to say. I haven't heard his name mentioned at all, but last night I thought was the best game. He was the most noticeable that I've seen him all season.
Yeah, he was very effective. He has not been what they expected him to be, and maybe it's just a matter of a really good player at one time just getting old. But every once in a while you can see what he was, and you kind of saw that against the Rams. It might be too little, too late. Although I keep saying I think if this team wins out, And really, that means beating Houston at home, because there's no way in a meaningful game that they're going to lose to Washington, even if it's on the road. I think if they win out, they're going to make the playoffs. I really do.
I would probably agree with it. We just broke down the scenarios. If they win out, the ways that they would not get in is if Minnesota wins out or Carolina wins out. Minnesota has a better shot. They played pretty well yesterday with a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, they did, and I was surprised by that, and I got killed for that because I guaranteed they would lose. So thanks to all the Twitter people. And my predictions are going solidly this season. By the way, shout out to Mike Gill, who predicted the Eagles to beat the Rams.
Thank you.
You were the only one to do it, although I thought you did it just to say if they pulled off the upset, you could call yourself a genius.
No. I gave you the 5 reasons why I thought that they could win it.
And if you were wrong, people would just forget about it. No, but I give you credit. You picked the Eagles to win. And look, I think you're exactly right. I think this is it. This is Houston. I think Minnesota's going to lose one of those 2 games, whether it's Detroit, which is not a very good football team, but it's on the road. The Vikings have been a terrible road team. And then I have Chicago week 17. And Chicago might be playing for that second seed. So they might have something to play for. And if that's the case, there's no way they're beating that defense. So they're going to lose one of those 2. And if the Eagles can beat the Texans, man, they're going to make the playoffs. And then we're going to have all these controversies.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Foles.
That will be great. John McMullen. By the way, why was Pederson picking on your hat?
I don't know. I tweeted out, it's a beautiful hat.
Just out of nowhere, you need a new hat? I mean, what is that?
Yeah. I think, and I don't know, I tried to get to him after the press conference.
What do you have against my hat?
He thought I was wearing a Super Bowl hat from last year, but it was a Super Bowl hat from Phoenix. I thought he didn't want the Super Bowl hat from last year. But that's my guess.
Did Jenkins ban your Super Bowl hat?
It's a beautiful hat. I don't know why.
I figured you were wearing the classic McMullen, one of the cigar hats.
That's the thing. I use many different hats. So Doug has seen me in like 100 hats. So
right.
Fine
hat.
I don't know.
I thought you would have said.
I think it was jet lag, to be honest.
I thought you would have said, I got a free bowl of soup with this hat,
I should have. I was caught off guard.
Caught me off guard. I'm listening to it. I was listening to the press conference on Twitter there on the Eagles, Eagles Twitter feed, and I hear your question coming. Now, that was an early McMullen question. You're usually more in the back end. You popped in there early.
Well, understand that Doug immediately looks to Zach and Jeff McClain and Zach Berman first. So you got to kind of defer to them.
All right.
And sneak your way in. And then, like on Friday, my God, I lost like 3 or 4 face-offs. I couldn't get anything in. There were so many people there. These things are like throwing red meat to sharks.
All right, well, Schwartz tomorrow. Looking forward to him. McMullen will have it right here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, pal.
All right, thanks, Mike.